is going to run through the basics of this new project we're doing, Splash of Color. So the very first decision you're going to be making is to what photo do you want to use. So while you have a lot of options, you want to kind of narrow it down. So if you have a certain subject that you're looking for, if you're particularly looking specifically for a black and white picture, something that is definitely something old, you may want to pick a certain theme. Like you might want to, for example, find a picture from World War II, right? So you can certainly run a search on Google for images, go to Tools, Size, Large. Now, during World War II, you'll find most pictures, well, probably all pictures for the most part, would be made from black and white film. So you might find something that is something that you would like to use. So you do want to also take into account the idea of adding color to these images. So if you find like one sort of subject in particular, you can focus on putting color in that subject, leaving the rest black and white. So you do have quite a bit of decisions to make. If you decide to go with a picture and you want to get, the whole thing colored, it's going to be more of a challenge. It's just going to take you a little more time, but you just have to be up for the challenge. So if you go for something like this, you have a lot of people, you have a lot of different elements, and you're going to have to make some decisions as to what you're going to keep color and what you're going to keep black and white, that kind of thing. So you want to think in terms of the project and the work you have to put into it, as well as what the end result is going to look like. Okay, so you can also look possibly, instead of like World War II, you can find some sports or celebrities or musicians back in the day. If you've heard of old baseball players, even if you run a search, old baseball photos, definitely run a search, and you're going to find people like Babe Ruth and Joe DiMaggio. So when you look, again, you look for a picture, and you might find something that would work, but also, what are you going to add color to? Of course, you're going to consider putting color on this guy's arms and the face, but for the rest of the uniform, what kind of options do you have? So you have to make sure when you do look for a picture, if it is an old picture, just also think in terms of what you can add to the photo to make it look, like it's been colorized, like color is added. All right. Another thing you can do is if you want to find modern pictures of things, you just want to make sure that the picture doesn't look modern. So if you find something like a beach, you want to do something for a beach, you can absolutely use a picture that has color, but just make sure it doesn't look too modern, where it has, people that look modern, things that look modern technology, that kind of thing. You want to make sure it looks pretty timeless. Okay. So I'm going to head over to my desktop because I did find some pictures that I do want to share with you, and we'll discuss some of the things about them. Let me set this up so we can see it. Okay, so Marilyn Monroe was a famous actress, celebrity back in the day. So this was a black and white picture I found off the internet. Good quality picture. And definitely something I could work with, because I can definitely work with putting some color onto the shirt. I could put some color in her hair and her face and the makeup and such. Do I have to do something in the background? No, but I can certainly try to make this look like sort of like dirt or sand. So something like this, timeless, but it is a modern picture. But there isn't anything that kind of gives it away. If I made this black and white, I definitely can work with this. And then there is enough color that I could add to it, so there's some work put into it. This one, an old glove, and there's no sort of information in this picture that would give it away immediately that it is a new modern picture, but it is something I could put color in. So I took a trip down to the Asbury Park area, and I just forget the name of this elephant, but anyway, so it was an elephant that was kind of made into a building, and it had a lot of functions, but it is an old um, landmark. But if I go with this picture, you can see, oh, Lucy the elephant, there we go. So you can see that, you know, the signage kind of makes it a little bit more modern looking, the car. So if I decide to use this picture, I can certainly crop it. Sort of this one, same thing, you got a big truck, modern truck in the front, but if I crop it a little bit, maybe it would be a little bit nicer. Something like this, you know, while there's some cars in the background, this would probably be the best suited picture because it looks timeless, right? So something like this, you know, I took this photo. This was over in Newport, Rhode Island, and it was just this random lighthouse. The reason why this might be a bit of a challenge to do if I make it black and white, there's not that much color to put into it. It was a gray day. There wasn't a lot of color in the sky. There's not a lot of color in the water. There's not a lot of color on the actual lighthouse except for the rust dripping down and this browner stone. So, you know, while I can certainly work with this, there may not be a lot of opportunity to explore different colors. What else do I have? Here's an old black and white picture of a baseball team from 1882. Wow. This one has a bit of a sepia tone. I could change it to black and white. This one, while this was made out of like a, you know, a composite sort of wood, not a real wood. This is in my backyard. If I make this black and white, there's really not that much to kind of give away that it is modern, except for the material that this is made out of. But if I make it black and white, it'll be very difficult to discern what the material is made out of, whether it's made out of wood or this composite wood. So this might be a good sort of composition. Maybe I want to do a picture where I make the, you know, these into bright, you know, beachy kind of colors instead of the gray that it is. So first decision you make is what kind of picture do you want to use? It could be a picture that you get off of your phone, a personal picture. It could be a picture of your family members. It could be a picture, like I said, you get off the internet. It could be something famous, but try to keep it where it's timeless. Okay, so once you've selected your image and you downloaded it, you're going to open it up in Photopea. I've decided to go with this image right here. Okay, so this is one that is already has color on it. So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to get rid of the color, desaturate it. This would also be good for if you happen to have an image that has a sepia tone or a green tone to it. For example, you can see that this isn't pure black and white. It's got a bit of a reddish brownish tone to it. So it would be the same idea. You would go to Image, Adjustments, and down below here there is Desaturate, and the shortcut on my MacBook would be hitting Command and the Shift key and U. You might have it might be different on your Chromebook. It might be Control with the Shift key and the letter U. You can also go to Hue Saturation here, and you can drag the saturation all the way down. But I'm going to do it the second way, right down here, Desaturate. So you can see now the image is black and white. It's at this point that if you would like to crop it, you can certainly crop it. Sometimes cropping it would help you center your subject a little bit better. Sometimes it's to get rid of some more modern images or modern things in the picture, but I'm just doing it to get it kind of focused on the actual subject. Okay. And then after you crop it, I have it set up where it's free. So I wouldn't do a fixed ratio or fixed size. I would just do it free so you can crop it as a square or a long rectangle, however you want. And then you hit the check button. Okay, a couple things I want to talk about. When you are adding color, you want to make sure that you're zoomed in to the area that you would like to work on. So it's very important that you get to know this zoom tool. It's the letter Z, and you have a plus sign. So if you know you want to zoom into a certain area, you click on that certain area. Once you're zoomed in, if you hold down the space bar, it'll change to a gloved hand, and that'll allow you to pan through your image like this. Okay, so you want to take advantage of zooming into the area so you make sure that you are properly coloring it in. Now, if you hold down the control button or the command button on your MacBook, but the control button with the minus sign on your keyboard will zoom out. Holding down the control button and hitting the plus sign will zoom in. If you hit the control button and 0, it'll fit it on the screen. Those options are also here in view. So you can see here's the zoom in, the zoom out, fit in the area. And that's what I was talking about. Here's your shortcuts. So what we're going to do is we are going to start adding some color. So if you want, especially if it's something that already had color, if you want to refer back to the original picture, you can certainly do that. Or if you want to just make it up on your own, you can do that as well. So we're going to start with a color, and I'm going to add a new layer. So I hit the new layer button on the bottom, and I'm going to zoom in to this area right here. And I'm going to hit this field right here. I know it was like I think it was like a goldish sort of tone. So I'm going to rename this layer trim. Okay, maybe gold trim. It's just helping describe what that actually is going to be, the color. So I'm going to now select a color that I think would be best fitting. So I'm going to hit the foreground color, and I'm going to go ahead and pick something that I would like to use, like to try out. So now we're going to be using the brush. Up on the top here, here's your brush options. You have a little sample, and then you have a drop-down menu. If you click on that, that'll give you some basic brushes right over here. And you want to you can adjust the size this way. One thing I want to focus on is making sure you have the hardness up to 100. Now, as you start painting, you can change the size of your brush by hitting the brackets next to the P on your keyboard. Zooming in, zooming out. You can also use the eraser to remove the paint in the area you don't want it to be. It has the same rules and it uses the same brushes, just like your brush tool. And if I hit the brackets next to the P, the eraser tool follows the same rules as my brush. So by zooming into the area and by picking the correct brush, I'm going to carefully paint over the areas that I would like to have color. So I'm going to be continuing on with the eraser tool and the brush tool and cleaning up this area, but I can definitely do that later. A little trick, by the way, once I know that I have my brush a good size and I'm working with this size brush, and I also have the eraser the right size, instead of clicking back and forth from the brush to the eraser, brush to the eraser, if I hold my finger on the E, I can jump right to the eraser tool. And if I click on the B, it'll bring me right back to the brush. So without having to jump back and forth from the toolbar to my work, if I just hit I can use the shortcuts for the eraser tool and the brush tool. Okay. So now I'm going to change the mode of this layer. Right now this doesn't look realistic at all. So in order to make this look like it's actually painting the photo, I'm going to change the mode from normal, and I'm going to try different ones. You can try The ones I focused on in class were color, and that looks kind of nice. Another one is hue, not hue, I'm sorry, overlay. And you can see that they're slightly different. There's definitely other ones that you can try out to see which gives you the best look. Now, while I do like the look of this, I know that I didn't color this in really well, because you can see in the background there I have too much going. So I could change the color or the mode from normal to color, and I can continue working with my brush and my eraser, and I can continue coloring this and fixing it up. I can't stress enough how important it is to zoom in to your subject. Even if you zoom in a lot and you end up with this pixely look, that's okay. It shouldn't be too much of a distraction. But when you pull far away, by cleaning it up really, really nicely, you won't even notice. So you can see how nice that looks. So you're going to continue this process. If you decide on changing the color, let's say that I start working on this and I find that I don't want this to be gold. After all, I want this to be a little different color. There's a couple of things that you can change. So for example, one thing you can do is, if I like the color but I just think it's a little bit too bright, I could take the opacity of the layer and lower it. So you can see that if I wanted to tone it down a little bit. I can also change the color of what I'm painting by going to Control U, and I can go to Hue Saturation, and I can drag the hue around. I can also lower the saturation of the color, and I can focus on the lightness a little bit, and that will definitely change the color a bit too. So if I wanted to tone it down, I could do it using the hue saturation. But the problem with that, well, the thing that you're going to face is when you go back to the brush and you start painting, you're still using the old color. So before you go crazy and you start coloring, make sure that you go back, change the mode to normal so you can see the difference. This is like a, kind of like a bronzy yellow, and just make sure that you switch the color. You sample it on the new color you made, and then you can go ahead and start applying the color there. So when you are ready, I'm still going to be working on this particular color, this gold trim. I'm going to be working on some other areas. Whenever you're ready to work on a different color, you're going to make a new layer. So let's say that I want to do, I want this, I guess looks like a painted rug on the back of Lucy. I'm going to just I can call it red, I can call it pink, I can call it carpet. I'm going to call this red carpet. And again, by renaming it, it just helps me indicate where I'm painting, like what exactly is on this layer. So when I go back, for example, to gold trim, I know that this is the area that I'm working on. I go to red carpet, I know that this is the area I'm going to be working on, because it's going to be difficult to see in these little thumbnails on the layers what exactly is in the picture. So I'm going to go through the same process. I'm going to be painting red in the area that I want to be red. I'm going to be changing the layer from normal to overlay, or normal to color. I'm going to find a few different varieties. Refine the color. So that would mean that, let me zoom in a bit so I can see what I'm doing. Get the right brush. Refine the color. I can hit Command U. I can define the color more. Exactly what I want to use. That is the sound of you guys coming into the meet. And then I can start painting, but I have to remember change color back to normal. You can see the new color I have. Sample that. Paint and continue. Okay. And you can see how the color will change when it goes into the shadows, but it's still the same color. Looks like I'm going to be very careful when I go through these zigzagged areas. I'm going to show you next video, or next portion here, I'll show you some shortcuts that'll help you get through some of those time-consuming areas. A little trick I want to mention, and I mentioned it in class today, is using the magic wand tool or some means to make your selection, use some tools to help you make selections of areas. So, for example, this little zigzag area, it's going to be pretty time consuming and very intricate for me to remove those spaces from the red. So there are ways that I can work around this. For one thing, I can use a lasso tool. Okay, so if I use the polygonal lasso tool and I make a selection of a straight line and I select what I want to remove, where I want to remove the color, the polygonal lasso tool will allow me to do straight lines like this. So what I'm doing is I'm selecting around the space that I would like to erase. And in fact, I want to add to it. So if I come up here and I go to Unite, right now it's set to replace. If I hit Unite, what it'll allow me to do is select more. So I also want to get rid of, I don't want red in this space either. So what I can do now is I can go to my eraser, and this time I can use a nice big eraser and remove that red from that space, because the eraser is only going to erase in the area that is selected. It's not going anywhere else. So that's one way you can do that. So if I wanted to work in these areas here and just kind of follow with the polygonal lasso tool, I feel like I have a little bit more control over the situation here with the straight areas. Now there's also just a regular lasso tool that I can certainly use as well, and along with. So right in here, I actually want that to be red. So I don't want to eliminate that. I actually want to remove that from the selection. So instead of Unite, I can hit Subtract and take away the spaces that I don't want selected. Now this might seem a bit time consuming, but in the long run it's absolutely worth it, because if you Command D, get rid of it, if you see it from far away, you can definitely see how nice and refined that looks. Now there's another tool in these selections here, and it's the magic wand tool. Okay, and what that will do is it'll make those selections, it'll get the marching ants around the area, but what it'll do is it'll pick colors that are very similar. So if I go to the magic wand tool, I want to select these lighter colored zigzags. So if I select them, marching ants will be around those. But got to make sure that you are on the background, because I don't want to use the magic wand on this layer. I want to use the magic wand tool on the background. So I'm going to select the background and I just click into that area, and you can see it. It made a pretty decent selection over there. So again, I can go with my eraser and remove it. Whoops. All right. So what happened was that I was on the background. So I go back to the red carpet and then hit. Okay, got it. Because I'm removing it from the red. Now, if I made a selection and I wasn't really happy with the way that the magic wand picked it, there are some variables that you can change. So you can see that it didn't select these pieces over here, and maybe because they're different, they're too different in color. You can change the tolerance. Now, the tolerance means the amount of acceptance. So if the tolerance is set very low in my magic wand tool, that means it's not going to select as much variation as if I had the tolerance set up higher. So if I have the tolerance set to 5, for example, and I select over here, you can see it selected a small amount. So if I click, I'm going to click right here, you can see it selected less. But if I change the tolerance to 40 and I go to the same area, you can see it selects more. So you just want to change the tolerance to fit what you think would be best. Okay, so that's just another tool that you can use, and it's very dependent upon the spaces, right? Like this looks really nice and clean and cut. Now, here's an area here I actually want to be red. I don't want to get rid of that. So I can certainly go back to my regular lasso tool, and I can go to subtract, and I can subtract areas manually if I want. See how I can use all of these selection tools with each other. So if I have add and subtract, so I can use this along with the magic wand tool if I want. Okay. I go back here, I go add, okay, and use the eraser tool, a little bit smaller. Whoops. Make sure you go to the red carpet layer, or red, the layer that has. So that is just a way that you can kind of gain a little bit more control.